Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers, and today is Wednesday, May 4th. May the 4th be with you. I had to say that just because. All right, we got a big show today, and we're going to talk NBA playoffs. Now, just so you know, tomorrow night, Cinco de Mayo on May 5th, there's no NBA. So you have Heat Sixers tonight, followed by Mavericks Suns. Nothing tomorrow. Then these teams will play again Friday. Heat will go to Philadelphia. Suns will go to Dallas. And then Celtics, Bucks, Grizzlies, Warriors, that resumes on Saturday. So just putting that out there. There's no NBA tomorrow. We also have 4 game twos inside the Stanley Cup playoffs that continue tonight. We'll go over last night's crazy games, including that Penguins-Rangers triple overtime thriller won by Pittsburgh. So we'll talk about that. Also hit on Major League Baseball as well, coming up in just a bit. But let's first talk about the NBA playoffs, and we bring on Vince Akins. That is right, our man with the trends. He's got them all. And Vince, good to see you again. We'll hit on the 2 games tonight in just a moment. But first, want your thoughts on what unfolded last night and the Boston Celtics. They came out with a vengeance. And look, hot start out of the gate, 32 in the first, 33 in the second, kind of went on cruise control in the second half, hit a lot of threes. What did you think about this? Boston bouncing back after the bad game 1 loss to Milwaukee.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kevin. I thought that the most interesting part in that game, and obviously, Marcus Smart missing, I wouldn't necessarily think would drive this, was the Bucks attempting just 18 three-pointers last night. So, I looked it up because I knew that was a curious number. The last 4 seasons, going back to 2018, 2019, Milwaukee's only had 1 previous game where they attempted less than 25 three-pointers in a game. So 4 years worth of games, they'd only attempted less than 25 three-pointers once in a game, those four years spanning 300 some games. So to attempt 18, it was interesting to look back and kind of think about what happened there. And you think about Marcus Smart, the Celtics, defensive player of the year, theoretically their best perimeter defender. You think without him in the lineup, they might have actually got some more three-pointers. So I think it's really going to be something interesting to watch as that series goes along. Obviously, the Celtics defense really held up even without Smart last night. But is Milwaukee going to be able to generate enough three-point attempts? Obviously, they only made 3 of the 18 that they did take in that game. So it wasn't like they were only settling for just the best of looks, because they didn't hit those either.
So the Celtics have 5 players hit at least 5 threes. Tatum hit 5, Jaylen Brown hit 6, and Grant Williams hit 6. So that is helpful when you hit 23 pointers. Giannis was just, at the beginning of the game, Vince, he was just throwing up shots like he was Kobe Bryant. Like, it didn't matter. I'm just going to go, spin, do whatever. It just felt very, very forced for Giannis early on.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, a bit of a lethargic effort from the Bucks. There was a couple of just very careless turnovers. They mounted a little bit of a run at times, so they never got quite back to where you'd call it a real game in that second half. But they hung around a little bit until the fourth quarter got away there, but just never really drove the energy with any big runs in that game. It was almost like that they were happy that they had taken game 1 in Boston, and then the split was all they needed. But it was kind of a strange, considering how tightly contested this series is going to be. It was sort of a strange effort from Milwaukee, I thought.
So 2 unders in this series, both pretty clear cut. Now this total is dropping down to 213 for Saturday as they flip to Milwaukee now. And the Bucks are favored, obviously, and we have to see what Marcus Smart's situation is. But do you ride Boston again? Now you're getting points with them. They were just laying points in game 2. Now they're getting points on the road, or you think Milwaukee turns it around going back home?
That'll be interesting. Game 1, I think there was definitely value on the under. I was on the underplay for game 1. Last night I was on Boston. That was an easy victory as well. I do think as the total starts to adjust, that value is going to be cut on the under, even at a number like 213. I don't necessarily think the value is completely gone on the under in this series.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting now. Boston, who did not look good in game 1, and there was question marks after that Brooklyn series, just about not the validity of beating the Nets in 4, but Brooklyn had all their issues, and now you wonder, you're facing the defending champions, what's going to happen, even though Middleton is out, but still good effort by Boston last night. So now they're 1-1. Also, Grizzlies and Warriors are 1-1. After John Morant went off, he had 47. And Memphis, who had their opportunities in game one. Morant missed that late layup, and we know the controversy before that with the jump ball. But big win last night for Memphis at home. So now they're 1-1 going out to the Bay for game number 3. But what were your thoughts about Memphis getting this win and also this game easily staying under the total?
Yeah, I should mention there was an interesting playoff system that was active on both these games last night. And I do really feel like it sort of applied to the Grizzlies here, is that teams have done really well against the spread when they're a top 3 seed, a higher seed. They lose game 1 at home, coming back in game 2. Those teams are, I forget the exact number, but they're definitely over 60% against the spread going back the last 20 years of the playoffs. And obviously both Boston and Milwaukee recovered in these games with covering and winning outright. This really felt like a game. Obviously Boston needed that game too as well, but this really felt like a game where Memphis was playing to probably avoid a sweep. I feel like they fell down 2-0 last night. It might have been all she wrote for the series. Now a little bit more intrigue going out to Golden State. As far as the performance, obviously great performance from the Grizzlies. Ja Morant, 47 points. It did feel like, particularly in that fourth quarter, some of the things that were working for the Grizzlies might not be the most sustainable as we move forward, particularly as we go to Golden State. Just how reliant they were on Ja Morant isolations late in possessions. Like it was a little bit of a LeBron James ball, I like to call it. But, as good as Ja Morant is, he's not necessarily LeBron James. And those possessions end up being efficient in game 2, particularly down the stretch there. But I'm not sure that's something in particular that the Grizzlies should be counting on going to Golden State.
Yeah, we'll see the situations with Dylan Brooks, if he gets suspended or not after the hard foul, and Gary Payton Jr. And that's a big hit if Dylan Brooks doesn't play in game 3 for the Grizzlies right now. Golden State laying 6.5 on Saturday. That total of 226.5. So that total just dipping down a bit after he got 207 last night. All right, let's transition to tonight now, Vince. And you really wonder with the Philadelphia 76ers what they have left in the tank without Joel Embiid. They thought James Harden could help. I'm not saying help carry this team alongside Joel Embiid to go far in the Eastern Conference. Embiid is an all-star. He's an MVP. With him out, Harden can only do so much, and it's not. I feel like he's a shell of himself. Tyrese Maxey's played well in the playoffs. Tobias Harris had a good game 1, but the Heat just have played this lockdown defense so far through the first round and game against Atlanta in the first game against Philadelphia. But do you think Miami can come out again against Philadelphia? What are the trends telling you about their game 2 matchup tonight with the Sixers?
Sure. We'll have a mixed bag here with a little bit on both sides. Just talking about this series in general, I was on Miami and the under in game 1 as well. And I do think that Miami perimeter defense is a perfect matchup for the 76ers, particularly without Joel Embiid, when there's no floor space or big men to go to. The Miami perimeter defense obviously did a nice job on Harden and Maxey in game 1. And easy to expect the same here, but now that this number's creeping up to 8.5, you got to look at some spots where there might be some value. So we dig in here, looking at some numbers. First off, looking at interesting situations based on game 1. The 76ers obviously only scoring 92 points. That's certainly not going to be enough to get it done. It wasn't enough to get it done game 1. Interestingly, looking back, this goes back to December 2017. The Philadelphia is 21-6 against the spread, coming off a game where they scored less than 95 points. And it's been nice the last couple of years as well. Over that stretch that I pulled out there, by far the best team in the league against the spread, coming off a game where they scored less than 95 points. So, you think about the offensive struggles. For whatever reason, Philadelphia, obviously that's been a lot of the Joel Embiid era, hit or miss as well. He's played all those games. Not going to be here tonight, but they have found ways to recover offensively. So one thing that was, I thought, interesting on both sides in that game 1 was the 3-point shooting. Philadelphia going 6 of 34 from threes in game 1. Miami 9 of 36. Not all much better. So pulling up something, starting looking kind of league wide. I want to look at teams that shot less than 20% on threes in a playoff game. In their next game, going back to 2019, they're 9-3 against the spread. And going back even further, all the way back to 2009, those teams have covered the spread over 58% of the time the next game. So you think about some of the variance involved in 3-point shooting. Obviously, Philadelphia is generally better than a 6 of 34 3-point shooting team. So league wide, there has been some expectation for some variance that bounces back towards these teams. Next game, I will point out though that the Heat obviously only shooting 25% on threes themselves, and they're 8-0 against the spread in their last 8 games, coming off a win where they shot no better than 25% on threes. So a little bit of that same thing. They were able to find a victory as they were in game 1, but didn't shoot the ball all that well from long range, which you think about Miami's a better 3-point shooting team than that in general. So there might be some positive regression from the Heat even after winning that game. So a couple more notes here. First, one more for the spread, and this one favors the 76ers as well. So looking back at teams that won by at least 35 points 2 games ago and then lost last game. This covers regular season and playoffs. Those teams historically have covered at a rate just over 56% in the third game of that sequence. So they won by 35 plus 2 games. So it was just a complete blowout. And obviously Philadelphia did that in this situation, finishing off the Raptors in that game 6. Now they lost game 1 of this series. So those teams do really well against the spread. And finally here, this is one I just uncovered last night when looking at this game. So Tobias Harris carried the 76ers offense, 27 points in game 1. Bit of a rarity. So I want to look at how Philadelphia has fared coming off a game where Harris had a big scoring day. Obviously, a little bit of inconsistency from Harris, but there are some big games like this. So looking back at his time with the 76ers, Philadelphia is 115-1 over under, coming off a game where Harris scored at least 25 points. So, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to find when looking at that, but huge under trend, which makes sense. They were relying heavily on scoring on a guy that's not the most consistent. Coming back to the next game, games tend to be lower scoring than expected. Obviously, 15 unders, 1 over, and 1 push in that time frame with Harris on the 76ers.
So there's a lot there, Vince, on Philadelphia as far as historical notes on them that they would bounce back, considering, like you mentioned, the blowout of Toronto at the end of that series and then losing the next game, 56%. So, and that's not playoffs. That's any game, right?
Yeah, and I think that covers this sample size of about 200 games. So when you think about that kind of sample size at 56% against the spread, is a nice, actually 56.3%. It's a nice historic number to see there.
Okay. And look, a lot of things go towards them. The Heat have the one positive trend as far as them not shooting well on threes, coming off a win 8-0 ATS since 2016. I like the Tobias Harris one. 15-1-1 to the under when he scores at least 25 points last game. So now you wonder, if that carries over to tonight, and we'll see if Miami's defense steps up again against Philadelphia. Now, let's go to the second game, the Mavericks and the Suns. And Phoenix was in control of that game 1, Vince. Dallas came back, had a shot at a cover. Devin Booker had 2 free throws late to give Phoenix the cover, but a high-scoring game on not a high total. The total's been bumped up a little bit tonight, so we'll see how that one goes. And what do you have for the trends for this game?
Sure, yeah. Talking about that game, obviously a 7-point victory for the Suns, looking at the final box score, but that was not particularly indicative of how close, or in this case, not close or not competitive game 1 really was. And it's interesting, maybe telling, I think, the way Phoenix treated that fourth quarter and almost just seemed to put things on cruise control and was confident that Dallas couldn't come back on them, even as they were, in fact, coming back on them. So we'll start there. I'm going to jump down a little bit here. So we mentioned a 7-point victory for Phoenix in game 1, but Dallas won the fourth quarter by 10 points. So I was kind of curious. I want to look at how teams do in the playoffs coming off a game where they win the fourth quarter pretty handily, but still don't win the game. And if that was actually momentum building, or if that's sort of overrated on the next game. And what I found, this one goes back to the 2015 playoffs. Teams are 5-15 against the spread, coming off a playoff loss where they won the fourth quarter by at least 8 points. So that qualifies here with Dallas winning that fourth quarter by 10 points. So instead of carrying the momentum for the next game, that's a little bit of fool's gold, making games maybe seem a little closer than they were. And I think that might be the case here. So some other nuggets on this game. So obviously the most impressive performance individually was Luka's 45 points in game 1. So I want to look at how teams have done when carried by one player scoring wise in the playoffs. Just going back to 2018, teams are 12-24 against the spread, coming off a game where their top scorer had at least 43 points in a playoff game. Interestingly, 3-8 against the spread when that was a loss. So this was active once this season. It was Jimmy Butler had 45 points for Miami in one of those Atlanta games, and that they came on and then lost the next game 3 to Atlanta in that case. Also, and even a little larger here, going back to those 2018 playoffs, teams that coming off a playoff game where their top scorer had at least 22 points more than their second leading scorer. So that was the case here for Dallas. Luka scoring 45 points in game 1, and their second highest scorer was Maxi Kleber with just 19 points, a 26-point difference between those top two scorers. In these games, teams are just 13-31 against the spread coming off such a performance. So going to mention a couple of assist numbers here. One, and there's one favoring Dallas here. Going back just to January 26th of this year, they are 9-1 against the spread coming off a game where they had no more than 18 assists. Dallas had just 16 assists in game 1, an interesting game where they had 40 baskets. That was really indicative of a lot of isolation from Luka in that game. So they have found ways to recover against the spread the second half of this season. Phoenix, on the other hand, had more assists in that game, but interestingly, and this really stood out to me, Chris Paul with just 3 assists in game 1. And that's something you don't see a lot. So I was curious, how Chris Paul and his team, obviously his various teams, do after such a low assist total for Paul. And this one goes back to 2017, 2018. So we're covering a couple different teams here. But Chris Paul and his teams are 17-5 coming off a game where he played but had no more than 3 assists. So you think about that. There's some meat left on the bone there, perhaps, of how Phoenix plays in this game too. I believe Devin Booker had 8 assists in the game, but Chris Paul just 3. That's unusual, and you could probably expect that number to bump up here. And finally, just like I left that first game, I'll leave you guys with a nice nugget with the total in this game. So Phoenix was perfect from the foul line in game 1, 18 of 18. So teams in the playoffs, and this one goes back historically 20 years here, teams coming off a game where they're perfect in the free throw line. It doesn't happen as often as you might think. In the playoffs, the next game, they are just 4-22 over under. So 22 of the 26 games have gone under the total. And you think about some of the reasoning of that. Phoenix's expectation last game, you figure 18 free throws, that's probably 13 makes, maybe 14 makes, depending who's at the line expectation. Making all 18 of those, that's 4 or 5 free points that were added on to that game 1 number. And you think about the perception of the game, the total moving up a little bit here. Teams free throw shooting game to game is not particularly consistent. You expect some regression back to the mean, and then teams have really done that when they're perfect from the free throw line in a playoff game, and the games have gone under the total pretty consistently historically coming off that kind of performance.
I got to ask you this one question, Vince, with one of these trends that you how do you come up with this one? The teams are 5-15 against the spread since the 15 playoffs, coming off a loss where they won the fourth quarter by at least 8 points. It's a great trend, but where does that come from? With your system and all that, how does that spit out as opposed to, if they won the fourth quarter by at least 5 points or 7 points or 10 points? How does that come up?
Yeah, so that that's one that I sort of individually curated looking at, particularly when we get to these playoff games, just take you behind the scenes a little bit, when doing daily baseball right now or daily basketball, there's a whole list of hundreds of things that I look at daily for the games that generate for each game, but those aren't 15 games a day. I'm not doing a lot of tweaking, or I might pick out 1 or 2 games that look interesting and then really dig into them, or 3 games dig into them. A situation like this, playoffs, a couple of games, I'm actually able to curate these a little further. And I decide, I think about what were some interesting things that happened, if I don't have any information on it already, or some interesting things that happened in the game, go back and look at this. So how that started was I looked at how teams, did after a loss where they won the fourth quarter, just won in general. Those teams are below 500. I don't remember the exact number, but they're below 500 against the spread. I think it's somewhere around 45% against the spread just in general. So I was thinking about, okay, well, let's, play around, 5 points, 8 points, 10 points, and see what some different numbers look like, just to see historically how those teams have performed and then what looks interesting there.
So you came up with that yourself, and then you kind of just messed with it. It wasn't like a computer that came up with that. Like, you thought of that. You said, wow, that Dallas came back late. They were down. Does this mean anything for the next game? So you're the one that was like, okay, now let me see how that situation's been.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. All right. No, it was a good thought. It's, I think we all think about that at times, like seeing these things, like how often does this happen or not? And obviously in the playoffs, it's different because, it's one thing in the regular season, you come back, you're traveling to a different city, all this other things where really you don't have all those factors in the playoffs. You wonder, all right, is Dallas now going to play better in the next game, or really the game was out of hand and it really didn't make a difference? So that's really interesting with that last one. Vince Akins, you could find him on Twitter at SB Breakers, and we'll have Vince on again during the NBA playoffs. Always enjoy his trends. And after tonight, we're off Thursday and back Friday with the NBA playoffs. So we'll see how all that goes. And Vince, we appreciate it as always. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope everyone's enjoying this postseason. I'm personally having an awesome postseason for the third straight year. And I'll just shout out real quick that 64% with sides and totals the last three postseasons now, including 20, 23, and 10 this year. So, you talk about the data and the ability to really focus on each game, pull out individual things. It does make a difference, I'll say. So, appreciate the time, and I'll look forward to talking to you guys next week as well.
All right, there is Vince Akins, and good to talk to him. And the postseason, you can really take advantage of it and just look for these spots. And it kind of felt like, not that this zigzag theory, what people have talked about in the past, the zigzag, it goes one way, first game goes the other way, the second game. And yes, it worked in Boston, Milwaukee, but Golden State won game one, didn't cover. Memphis ends up winning game two, and obviously they cover because they were an underdog. But so Memphis ends up going 2-0 against the spread in the two games at home, but they're only 1-1 straight up, where Milwaukee won game one. Spread dropped a little with Marcus Smart out, and then Boston has rolled them in game two. So now, again, tonight, you would think if you went to zigzag, Philadelphia and Dallas would be the two teams you would back. But my issue with the 76ers is I just don't have faith in them. I do not have faith without Embiid, in James Harden, and there's no bench past Harden, Maxey, and Tobias Harris. Who else are you trusting on that team? Like that really is what it comes down to score. And if Harden's going to throw up a 4 of 17 or whatever he does, then who else is going to step up? I don't have the faith in other guys to step up on that Philadelphia team with Joel Embiid out. All right, let's take, before we get to the hockey, and we'll look at the Stanley Cup from last night and look at tonight's action as well as some of the night action in Major League Baseball. I want to tell you about SI Sportsbook, Sports Illustrated Sportsbook. You can find them online at sisportsbook.com. For users in Colorado, the great state of Colorado, must be 21 years or older. New users only get up to $300 in free bets. Deposit with the promo code AFF300, and you get up to $300 in free bets. Check them out today in Colorado. Must be 21 years or older. Full terms and conditions apply. That is the Sports Illustrated Sportsbook, and you can find them online at sisportsbook.com. And you can always peruse their lines even outside of the state of Colorado, but you can only wager in Colorado with them. But check them out today, the Sports Illustrated Sportsbook. All right. So last night in the Stanley Cup playoffs, in case you missed it, don't know if you were paying attention or not. I always like to assume you're not as opposed to you are, just because you don't know what people are doing. So two underdogs came in the East. Two favorites came through in the West. The Penguins outlast the Rangers in triple overtime at Madison Square Garden, 4-3. Igor Shesterkin, the great goalie for the Rangers, had 79 saves. That's right. Pittsburgh had 83 shots on goal. I understand they played basically two games, in a sense, but Pittsburgh was down 2-0 early. They came back. They rallied past New York. They win at 4-3. So they're up 1-0. Penguins closed plus 130-ish in that range. Big upset of the night, though. The Capitals rally past the Panthers 4-2 in South Florida. Panthers closed a 250 favorite. They were up 2-1 early in the second. They didn't score again. Washington got 3 in the third, including an empty netter. And the big play, Alex Ovechkin stripping the puck from Panthers defenseman Mackenzie Weegar. And then Evgeny Kuznetsov goes in one-on-one on Sergei Bobrovsky, scores in the breakaway. Then TJ Oshie scored a few minutes later. Capitals got the 4-2 win. So now the Panthers looking to even up the series on Thursday night. And they are the top overall seed, President's Trophy winner. And we'll see if they bounce back against the Capitals. Now, the team that they beat out for the President's Trophy, the Colorado Avalanche, 5-0 lead in the first. They beat Nashville 7-2, laying over $3. So who cares about the puck line? They're 5 goals after 1. Pretty much on cruise control. The late game was Calgary beating Dallas 1-0. Flames got an early goal, and that held up. I actually had as my only play in the NHL last night, Dallas puck line. So that was a winner. Had to lay a little bit of juice with the Stars, but Dallas had played Calgary tough this season, beat them once, and lost another game by a goal, lost another game by 2 goals, but Calgary had a late empty netter. Sometimes those empty netters, you got to look back and say, okay, it's not really indicative of how the game went, but Calgary ended up winning that game 1-0. So you had 2 road dogs, 2 home favorites win last night, and so far 4 home teams have lost in the opening round of the playoffs. So let's look ahead to tonight, and the Bruins and Hurricanes, the first one out of the chute. What's amazing with Carolina is this season, and I don't know what the odds makers were doing, if they were just expecting more out of Boston, but so far in the first 4 matchups, for 3 regular season meetings and 1 postseason meeting, the Bruins have scored 2 goals against Carolina. They have been outscored so far 21-2 by Carolina this season, and yet Carolina still not a heavy favorite in this game 2 tonight in Raleigh. And Carolina, who, again, Metro Division champions. Boston's still a pretty good team, but Carolina's handled them a lot this year. And Carolina looks to go up 2-0 with a win coming up tonight. The second Eastern Conference game, Tampa Bay and Toronto, Maple Leafs blanked the Lightning 5-0 in the opener. And in this series this year, it was 2-2. The winning team now in the last 4 meetings has scored 5 goals or more. So look at that. Maybe, even though the other game went under 2 nights ago, 5-0 on a 6.5 total, that the winning team in this series has scored a bunch of goals so far this season. But Toronto laying nearly $1.40 at SI Sportsbook, and Tampa Bay, the 2-time defending champions, not a good showing in Game 1. Now we'll see what they do here in Game 2. They're trying to even up the series at 1 game apiece. The St. Louis Blues, I mean, we talk about all these teams that have owned their opponents. Carolina over Boston. And Tampa Bay, Toronto's been pretty even. But St. Louis, they shut out Minnesota in Game 1. And the Blues are 4-0 this year against the Wild. And Minnesota's still favored here. St. Louis, who ended the season with back-to-back losses, dropping them to the 3 seed in the Central, so they lost home ice advantage, but it didn't matter because Minnesota, who was fantastic at home this year, they end up getting shut out by St. Louis, and we'll see what the Wild do in this one. I think Minnesota could bounce back here in this spot, even though they've had their problems with the Blues. Also, another home team that needs to rebound, the Edmonton Oilers. And Edmonton has had some struggles, losing early on in the playoffs the last 2 years. LA struck first with a victory in Game 1. The Oilers laying $2 against the Kings here in game number 2. And look, LA playing with house money right now. They're not expected to do much in these playoffs. But if LA can somehow shock Edmonton, you're just going to see another season with the Oilers with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and just another wasted year with these guys who are every year at the top of the goals and the point totals. Connor McDavid had the most points in the NHL this year. And you got to find a way to win these games if you're the Edmonton Oilers, especially playing a team like LA, who is good, but you have home ice, you're a better team, you got to beat them. It's simple as that. Now let's take a look at the some of the baseball for later, and let's start with the Yankees and the Blue Jays. They meet up in Toronto this evening, and you got to give the Yankees a ton of credit because they have won now 11 straight, and they've taken the first two in this series with the Blue Jays. So all of a sudden now, the Yankees, who a lot of people I think were writing off due to this division where Toronto was the favorite coming out of spring training. Boston has underachieved. Baltimore's not a factor. Tampa Bay's been up and down, but Tampa Bay's won the last two in Oakland. But the Yankees are now 18-6. Like think about this job that the Yankees are doing. And even Garrett Cole had some struggles early on in the season. He wasn't sharp. But yet the Yankees, they just keep doing it. That was a close game. That 9-1 score is very misleading from last night. The Yankees were down 1-0 going to the sixth. They were tied at 1 going to the seventh. They've got 6 in the seventh, 2 in the ninth to win it, 9-1. But Anthony Rizzo's had a very good year. You still have Giancarlo Stanton. You still have Aaron Judge. Josh Donaldson not hitting the ball great for New York, but you already got enough guns in that lineup. But the Yankees, though, you got to give them a lot of credit for what they've done, at least early on in the season. Nestor Cortez Jr., he gets the start tonight. 1.31 ERA for him. Yankees are 3-1 in his 4 starts, and he went 4 1/3 against Toronto last month in a 4-0 victory at home. And also the Blue Jays have struggled against left-handed starters so far this season in their few games they played against them. So the Yankees, they are a nice favorite here on the road against the Toronto Blue Jays. Meanwhile, the Angels and the Red Sox at Fenway Park, and Boston pulled off a shutout of LA last night. And the Red Sox were a short dog against Noah Syndergaard. Now they're flipped to a favorite coming up this evening. And for the Red Sox, it's going to be Garrett Whitlock on the mound. And Whitlock seeking his first win of the season, even though the last few times out to the mound, 4 scoreless innings and a 3-2 loss to Tampa Bay, 3 innings allowing an unearned run against Toronto. So he's going to get the start this evening for the Red Sox. And the Angels are going to go with Reed Detmers, the lefty, who pitched well in his last time out. That was against Cleveland. He shut down the Guardians in a 4-1 win. Angels are 2-2 in his 4 starts, but he's coming off his best start, allowing 2 hits in 5 innings. And the Angels, what's interesting with Detmers is first time he's listed as a dog this year. So we'll see what he does in that spot. Minnesota looking to beat Baltimore for the 3rd straight night. And the Twins and Orioles went under the first game over last night. Dylan Bundy, the former Oriole, takes on his old mates coming up tonight. And Bundy is coming off his worst start of the season. 6-1 loss to Tampa Bay on the road. 6 runs in 6 innings of work. Before that, he had allowed 1 run in 3 starts. And Minnesota went 3-0 in those games. So now he's trying to bounce back. And in this heavy favorite spot against Baltimore, we'll see if they could, not sweep them because they play them again tomorrow. This will be a 4-game series between the Twins and Orioles. The Rangers and the Phillies, and of course the Phillies threw out Ranger Suarez last night, and they ended up losing to Texas. You know what? Got to give the Rangers a little bit of credit here because even though they're 9-14, not a lot of expectations. They've won 3 in a row, beating the Braves twice and Phillies once. That's a good job by them. Also, their previous win was against Houston. So Texas has got some all right wins on their slate so far. Philadelphia, they pulled off that 4-game sweep of Colorado, but then lost 2 of 3 to the Mets and then lost this opener to Texas. So Philadelphia is going backwards. They're 11-13. And tonight, Martin Perez starts for Texas, coming off two pretty good starts. He allowed 6 earned runs his first 2 outings, both losses at home. And then his last 2 starts, 1 earned run in 13 innings against the A's and the Astros. So good job by him there. And the Rangers 3-1 to the under in his 4 starts. Zach Wheeler actually finally got a win his last time out because he had been struggling. ERA near 6, 1-3 record. Did go 6 scoreless, allowed 1 hit, 7 strikeouts against Colorado's last time out. So we'll see if Wheeler can continue that going into tonight's interleague series with Texas. Another interleague series on the north side of Chicago. White Sox and the Cubs. Ugly weather last night. White Sox got the win over their cross-city rivals, and the White Sox won 3-1. They've won 3 of 4, so playing a little bit better after they struggled for a bit. Chicago, I can't say Chicago. I say the Cubs because they're both Chicago. The Cubs, here's what they've done the last 5 games offensively. 1-2-1-1-1. That's no bueno. That's not good. Just goes to show you what a sham that 21-0 win over Pittsburgh was a few weeks ago. So they scored 21 against Pittsburgh. Let's do some quick math here. 10, 11, 12, 13. The Cubs have scored 16 runs in their last 8 games. They scored 21 in 1 game. All right, so which one is the anomaly? Yeah, exactly, the 21 runs. I'm sorry, I'm itching. But the White Sox throwing out Lucas Giolito tonight. So you got 2 aces on the mound, Giolito and Kyle Hendricks. Giolito lost his last start to the Angels 5-1. Allowed a couple homers, 7 strikeouts in 6 innings. So Giolito still seeking his first win, even though his ERA is at 2.57. Kyle Hendricks was no good in his last start. 6 earned runs against the Brewers in an 11-1 loss. But the Cubs are 3-0 in his 3 home starts, which includes 2 wins as a dog against the Rays and Brewers. So we'll see if maybe that will work out for Hendricks tonight. So the Reds are 3-20 now. 3-20. Joey Votto's hurt. The Reds, if they could just have someone trip on the wire and restart this thing this whole season, they would have that be the case. Tyler Mahle and Freddie Peralta on the mound. Mahle, who pitched well his first start, beating the Braves on the road, has not been good since. Cincinnati's 0-5 his last 5 starts. And why did I screw this up? I screwed this up. I'm sorry about that. That's not right. Why did I say Tyler Mahle? It's Vlad Gutierrez on the mound tonight. So excuse me. I don't make these mistakes that often, but I will own up to it now. So Vladimir Gutierrez goes because Tyler Mahle went last night and lost. So now he's 0-5. Got to cover a lot of things. So Vladimir Gutierrez, 0-4, 7.41 ERA. He has not lasted past the 5th inning in any start. And the Reds, in 3 of those starts, have scored 1 run or less. So that is not good. Gutierrez, I don't think faced, or he did early on. Here's something interesting. If you are feeling frisky and feisty, you take a shot on Cincinnati tonight. Cincinnati plus the 1.5. Last year, Gutierrez started 3 times against Milwaukee. 3 wins. 3 times he beat him. Allowed 2 earned runs, 2 earned runs, and 1 earned run. Maybe this is the guy. Maybe it's the kryptonite for the Brewers. Freddie Peralta, he starts for Milwaukee tonight. And Peralta, he actually has not been sharp, even though his last start, he beat the Pirates. I don't know how much that means. 6 scoreless innings, 7 strikeouts. His ERA is still at 5, so you got to fix that. But I will say the first 2 starts, not good. 9 earned runs. Last 2 starts, 11 innings, 1 earned run. So he's pitched better, but Milwaukee laying a ton tonight against Cincinnati. The final one we will look at, Washington and Colorado. The Nationals actually played a little better. They've scored 10 runs or more in 3 of the past 4 games. They took 2 of 3 at San Francisco. They really roughed up the Rockies last night, 10-2. So Washington now 4 straight overs. They're playing better. Colorado, expectedly, after sweeping Cincinnati, they don't play well. German Marquez does not have good numbers against Washington. And he got racked again last night. Eric Fedde pitched really well, 7 innings, and he needed to get on track somehow. So tonight you have 2 lefties on the mound. Austin Gomber, the former St. Louis Cardinal, came over to that Nolan Arenado trade. And Gomber, the last 2 starts, 6 innings apiece. He's 3-1 to the under. And he wasn't that bad against the Phillies. Philadelphia broke that game open late. They won 7-1. That was opposite Zach Wheeler. But Gomber allowed just 3 hits and 2 earned runs in 6 innings. So he's pitched better after a bit of a slow start. And he opposes Patrick Corbin. Patrick Corbin has struggled. I mean, this guy was good a few years ago in Arizona. Then he went to the Nationals, and he was on the team that ended up winning the World Series in 2019. But it's been a terrible time for him. So Washington is 0-5 in his 5 starts this year. He was actually had his best outing his last time out against the Marlins. 6 innings, 3 runs, 2 of them earned, 4 hits, 8 strikeouts. 3-2 loss to Miami. He actually looked good in that one. But I'll give you this number, though. In Corbin's last 10 starts dating back to last season, 8-1-1 to the under. So he's been a good under pitcher. I don't know if that's because Washington's offense has given him no support. 2-1, 3-4-1 are the amount of runs that the Nationals have scored in his 5 starts. And Corbin's had some experiences pitching in Colorado as a member of the Diamondbacks, but still, he's talking about a drop. That guy was a pretty good pitcher at one time. And I'll give you this number too, which is interesting. Washington's 9-16. They're 6-5 on the road and 3-11 at home. So at home, they're a total disaster, but on the road, they've been somewhat competitive. So the Rockies favored, obviously, again, against the Nationals tonight. So that is today's edition of the Daily Insider. As once again, we thank Vince Akins for joining us to break down the trends for tonight in the NBA. And Stephanie Odia will be in tomorrow. And then it's going to be Stephanie and Tom Carroll on Friday. I'm out on Friday. So that's it for the week. But Stephanie's going to be running the show tomorrow. And more NBA playoffs. And again, no games tomorrow night, but still a lot going on. Besides that, with the Stanley Cup and also with baseball every single day. That never stops. So that's always good. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Vegas Insider. We greatly appreciate it. And we will be back with you tomorrow at noon Eastern. So don't forget to tune into that, to the Daily Insider. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for watching. And as always, best of luck with your bets.